So my name is Jordan Whitaker. I don't have a lot of cool prefixes like doctor or whatnot, but I'm involved in the gaming space when it comes to eSports, right? And MAGFest, of course, is a music and gaming festival. I'm very interested in sharing what college eSports is and has become over time here in North America, at least. Of course, in different forms in the world, it manifests. It's in different ways. So that's what I'm here to kind of discuss, right? And I wanted to make this panel talk something that is accessible for people who know gaming, but perhaps they don't know what esports is, right? And then when you peel back another layer of that, esports in the college setting is even more confusing because college and university level esports is still very much a wild, wild west without any particular seriously reigning governing body necessarily, right? And there's many varieties of approaches that organizations have taken to providing structure to the environment. So, yep, that's my son over there chatting up, which brings me actually to a very important point. Esports, just like gaming, right, is all about community, and I have a lot of people here with me today, some of the most legendary League of Legends coaches in Nova's history. My child swim instructors here, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate that. Beautiful members of the audience, some prolific Nova players, some really great people, and people I've met through my connections at Mason as well. And that's really telling, isn't it, that the community aspect is really there, and I appreciate you being here. And of course, I want to thank my son for being a trooper. As somebody who's less than 2 years old, I don't know what he thinks when he sees all of us enjoying the convention. Probably he thinks we're odd because a lot of costume people are running about. But he's been having a great time, and everyone's been really nice to him. So, and of course, thanks to my supportive wife. If you know anything about the esports scene, there's not much security in it, and she enabled me to pursue these passions, leaving a really, secure financial state to be in something that's basically volunteering, right? She probably hates me. Anyway, let's continue. So, for us people at MAGFest, if you aren't familiar with esports, essentially it's electronic gaming, right? But the most compelling definition is a pretty short one for esports, which is just competitive gaming when we think about it. And of course, there's many parallels to traditional sports, and that's sort of why there's that sports nexus applied to the term. Very often when we think about esports nowadays, a lot of people view it through a lens of, hey, wow, now I'm hearing about it, it must be kind of new, right? Actually, esports has been around for a very long time in one form or another. Actually, you could arguably say since the early 60s, esports became a thing, right? Competitive gaming with the first computers, playing Space Wars, having competitions on college campuses, and then a lot of games being developed from that. As soon as we approach any kind of technology as humans, we always convert it for some reason or another into a form of entertainment or competition. That's just what we tend to do. Drones, for example, right, eventually became a commercial product. Now there's drone racing. Now there's a lot of forms of entertainment surrounding the use of drones. So esports has actually been around for a long time, and then of course became an official job status, and the term esports itself being coined in Korea in 2000, with the on the heels of the late 1990s surge of the all-English game known as StarCraft. Woo! Exactly. Very, very critical pillar in the esports historic and cultural progression. And it's not a surprise that it's become something which is growing importance in academia as well. There's been a significant push for a lot of schools to add esports for a variety of reasons, such as cultural expression. You look at conventions like these, clearly people are interested in gaming, and of course we're interested in doing it competitively. The whole premise of a lot of arcade games is competitive gaming through high score metrics, right? That's how we measure people's relative skills and skill expression. What can they do? What can they achieve? It's competitive gaming in its essence. And of course, as enrollment, in order to market to young people nowadays and their interests, esports is something that has grown in extreme importance when it comes to colleges and universities. Colleges and universities, of course, always concerned about bottom lines. I won't go too much on that topic. just because I work for like 4 schools, which is ridiculous. 3 of them universities. So, and these titles, these esports titles manifest nowadays in such things you're familiar with, such as Overwatch 2, League of Legends, Counter-Strike 2, Valorant, the game formerly known as FIFA, right? And of course, Rocket League, Hearthstone, all kinds of games. It spans actually quite a number of titles nowadays. I want to play a little game as well with you throughout this panel. I want to see who, by the end of the panel, can count how many headshots I've snuck into this presentation. All right? And then at the end, the person who raises their hand first and can tell me how many there were is going to get a prize. And it's quite a normal prize you might get in the esports realm. So if you've seen Zoolander, right, he picks up a Time magazine he sees in the trash can, and he says, and it's a slanderous article about Derek Zoolander, where he says, a model idiot, right? But it's actually he's a model idiot, and that's me. I'm a gamer, but am I an idiot? Who knows? My life is kind of odd, and I think it's kind of an important context in order to see how I approach understanding esports in academia, specifically at the college level. I was born in California, but I spent most of my life growing up throughout Africa. Through my formative years, both my folks were in the Foreign Service. And consequently, I believed, both my folks working for the State Department for like 30 plus years, I believed that was my path too. That's what it had to be for me, right? I had to work for the government. My parents saying, oh, you need to do this, you need to do this. Politics, I don't know, diplomacy, national security, peacekeeping, whatever. And I believed it, right? And so I went into college thinking I have to apply my focus towards things I wasn't particularly interested in. Political science was my undergraduate degree. Did really well in that. Went to grad school, got my master's in public policy with a focus on national security and defense studies. Then I spent about 7 years consulting in national security here in DC. Most recently working with Deloitte, helping intelligence community and foreign allied militaries. So how the heck did I make the change into competitive gaming, right? That's a pretty different field. I'll talk about that in a moment. Well, actually, I have to talk about it right now because that's the progression of my content. So there came a period of time in 2016 where I started to have a series of family passings every year. And it was very personally painful for me, right? Very traumatic, very difficult. And it got to a point where I had to examine my life and ask myself, hey, what am I doing with my time? Am I investing my focus and what I want to do into something that's meaningful, right? Am I embracing my passions? Am I setting myself up to be somewhere comfortable where I could start to raise a family and be a stable, healthy-minded adult? That's important, right, Theo? Monster trucks. Yeah. Basically, that's what ended up happening. And so mirroring North American esports at the time, 2016 was a formative year in esports because we had major investment from traditional sports investors flood the scene with cash, right? Then at the same time as I'm in my background thinking, not huge on consulting, everybody's fake. If you work for a consulting firm here, I don't think you are. Okay, you're real. It was cool, right? And it served a purpose for a time, but special guest. It was around this backdrop of esports really taking off as a hot conversation in entertainment in the U.S. And so I started to permeate in the back of my brain, think maybe there's an opportunity for me as well. So come a few family passings and all of this trauma and all this kind of like attempts to heal, I'm recognizing in the background, hey, I need to start sending out job applications and look around for esports. And, I had a couple applications go out to pro teams, got a couple good conversations going. I didn't want to move to LA, which was kind of like a huge thing. And of course, the scene's confined there largely at this point in time. So I started to look at the college level because it was booming, right? The time periods between 2014 and 2019 actually saw a huge uptick in the number of colleges and universities involved in esports. Those early years, a handful. You can count them on your fingers and toes. But by the time I was ready to move on from my consulting career, we were talking about hundreds of schools being involved in it. Now, with paid positions happening. So right here in Northern Virginia Community College was one of the first public institutions in this state to erect an esports facility. with branded stuff, all kinds of cool things, and just a great environment for students to express their passion and interest in competitive gaming and compete at the national level. So I went ahead and I volunteered for Northern Virginia Community College. Was a League of Legends head coach there. Still kind of am, but I do a lot of program coordinating work nowadays, in particular. So from that, I actually gained a decent amount of success, winning some stuff, because again, college scene is pretty decentralized, right? So it's the Wild West. We compete against Division I schools that have a ton more money, but we beat them, right? Because this area is ripe with a lot of talent. And so we ended up winning over the COVID period of time 6 national championships at the junior college level, getting a congratulatory letter from the governor of Virginia in the process, which was a huge deal for a lot of gamers to be validated in that way, right? What better way to show somebody who's young and has a passion that what they do matters? So from that success, Syracuse University reached out to me, and during COVID, they had a mandate that said, hey, we need to start developing course content so that people can remotely learn. Boom, I'm course developing for Syracuse and teaching for Syracuse. Then George Mason University, actually, right after my son was born, I was making contacts there with the director of eSports, and they were like, hey, we know that you've been doing stuff in eSports and academia and competitive stuff. We have a need for somebody who's involved in both fields, academia and the competitive aspects. Because as eSports matures in college, those two things are going very much hand in hand. So I became a professor there and a program developer there. I'm trying to develop a minor in eSports. Had my proposal out for George Mason University to have that. Hopefully this year stuff moves, but bureaucracy is always slow. It is a public institution after all. And lots of other things. I do a lot of random work in eSports, but that's kind of the nature of it. If you want to have a viable career, you have to be ready to do all kinds of different work. So that's Twong right there, my best friend. Why was eSports compelling to me? Just wanted to kind of revisit this. Actually, it came when I was in grad school. I realized after the first semester, one of our classmates in a very small graduating class size actually passed away. And the only thing that enabled me to stop my stress and allow me to sleep peacefully at night without just all these anxieties was League of Legends. My mind could shut off. And I became really captivated in self-improvement. I became really captivated in forming a schedule, setting goals, and achieving something, right? And League of Legends actually helped pause my life when in a time where my mind just wouldn't stop moving. And it enabled me to have peaceful nights of sleep, continue my studies, and have a structured day. Because I'd spend 14 hours in the law library studying and then look forward to League of Legends at the end of the day. Became a routine. So it was a healthy tool for me. And that's why I love League of Legends, still do. And it's a compelling thing for me. So that's sort of the precursor as to why I even began to think in 2016 to 2019 why I should be in esports at all, was because League of Legends, huge formative game in the esports scene, especially in North America. All right, I'm doing all right on time. So what do we do at Nova? We provide an esports program that competes at the national level, right? Community college, be damned. We compete against, we've beaten like Clemson, Yale, whatever, you name it. We provide students with opportunities to compete at these national levels, get national accolades, and have a space to do that. We cultivate a community where people who are engaged in these passions are able to have a place. Besides that, we provide opportunities for coaching, right? You guys, a couple coaches here from Nova, have helped a lot of individuals with their improvements in games, in skills, thinking about strategies, structuring gameplay, rather than just, hey, let's all get together and compete. These formalized practices with goals, doing VOD reviews, having insights as to what the meta is at the given time, like the strongest iteration of a game state, and intimating those things to students so that they have a structured learning environment where they can be competitive, right? And we also provide outlets for professional growth as well. We provide letters of recommendation, job recommendations, resume help, life advice in general, because we're kind of all spending time together constantly. When you're in an esports community and you're with a competitive team, you're always together. Every night, all the time. We're all constantly sending each other memes in Discord. It's funny. And what does Nova do? We try and we succeed, right? We won a bunch of national championships and provide students with institutional pride. Yeah. So what do we do at GMU? GMU is a huge community. It's a lot more supported and invested in and participated in by the community at GMU. There's tons of students involved, dozens of students with leadership opportunities, paid coaches, scholarship players at their highest team levels, and tons of coaching structures, team managers, all kinds of development infrastructure. And so that community is just quite sizable. And look, it's me again. We're providing academic opportunities at George Mason University. Right now I teach a fundamentals of competitive gaming class that students can take to learn about eSports for college credit. I was born in the wrong time period, right? I would have loved to get college credits just to learn about gaming. So, and we're building out a minor in eSports as well, in which I have a heavy hand. So there's a lot of opportunities, and George Mason University, for its own right, tries and succeeds as well. Last semester, George Mason University sent to nationals the second place team in Counter-Strike 2, and also won for Rocket League the Mid-Atlantic Esports Conference Championship right here in DC at District E, the venue owned by the same folks who own the majority of Team Liquid and the Capitals, the Mystics, the Wizards, the Go-Go. Esports is no small thing anymore, especially at the college level. But behind the backdrop of all of this, yeah, I can sweet talk you about how validated students feel and how great it is to have a forum and a structure for competition, right? That's phenomenal. But should esports be in colleges and universities? Who knows? Well, I say yes. And also yes, but in lowercase. That's what that button says. I think you can see it. Trying to be funny. I heard a chuckle. Anyway, this is one of the most famous infographics there is when people have conversations about esports in academia. I'm going to zoom into each quadrant of this and discuss esports applications and why education in esports helps prepare people to be involved in many competitive career fields. Let's start with so here at the center you can kind of see there's esports related professions, right? And emulating out of that, there's things like performance optimization, where there's high-level players. But when they're high-level players, what do high-level players need? They need health management. You can't just take somebody to compete at very stressful, nationally competitive levels and expect them to be successful if you treat them as if they're just some gamer, right? You surround them with as much infrastructure as possible to be supportive. There are teams now, and I've coached teams that actually have medical staff dedicated to the esports folks. A contract coach for Columbia College, and they actually had physical therapists and doctors working with them. It's amazing, right? Performance psychologists. What if these athletes hit a wall and they don't know how to improve anymore? They start to suffer in their balance in life, and they're not sure how to take their game to the next level. What about performance management? Who's helping program directors coach? Who's helping them VOD review, which is the videos of the post-game plays? Who's helping them do all these things, right? Who's recruiting students in high schools? Who's doing all of this stuff that helps make sure teams are competitive and remain so? There's many jobs within that side of the field as well. Then, of course, if there's a team and they're playing nationally at a really high competitive level, you need streamers. You need casters. People want to watch streams of gamers where, yeah, there's entertaining color commentators, right? We actually have Wes Johnson, the voice of the Capitals, coming to be a caster for a huge convention we're throwing on the George Mason campus next month called Game Mason. And then yeah, cool, right? We're on texting terms now. No, yeah. But anyway, you need hosts. You need somebody to present, hey, this is the tournament that's going on. Here's the finals between George Mason University and Nova, right? Of course. You need these things. And then you go over to education. Well, you know what? If it's a growing field, probably needs to be discussed in an educational context. So you have schmucks like me. You get people who are teaching it. You get people who are researching it. I need to do more of that research bit, but I'm a gamer, and sometimes reading is hard to fit into the schedule. I'm a family man, too. So I've got a lot of excuses, right? But oh my gosh, we're having events now. We're dabbling with the university's name at the national level. We're involving ourselves in contractual agreements with competitive leagues that are huge and have millions of dollars. Now we need to talk about legal context. How is the name of the university being represented? How are these players being portrayed? We think about code of conducts that students have to sign because now it's a professionalized scene. Now you can't just have gamers dilly-dally, go into a lobby against another school and say, I bleeped your mom, right? That's bad. We have to have these types of things discussed with students so they understand the high-stakes environment in which they're operating. And then, of course, there's other aspects of administration as well. Who's budgeting this stuff? If we're going to host conventions on gaming, if we're going to have scholarship students, there needs to be some kind of accounting going on and financial management, right? Of course, there's business aspects as well, because a lot of these things drive revenue for institutions. Actually, a lot of hosted events come with sponsors, and they start to handle a lot of money. So there's human resources, people who manage staffs that are responsible for making sure esports programs run smoothly, right? I'll give you an example. At George Mason University, esports falls under University of Life, which is, and then underneath that, student involvement is where esports is housed. They have a ton of employees who don't only do that, but they all contribute in some way toward esports and large events we do on campus. Then, of course, you have different aspects of business like the commercial stuff too. When we have events, when you're selling merchandise, there's jerseys for teams in the college level and space as well. There's sales and marketing. There's tickets for events. There's all kinds of brand management issues. The Office of Brand Management at George Mason University are always having a headache with, making sure, hey, make sure you say the sponsors are working with George Mason eSports, not the university as a whole. All these discussions are really important. Then, of course, the digital aspect. Who can escape the digital aspect nowadays? We have social media managers who pump out content. We do podcasts. We do all kinds of community management. The GMU eSports Discord has over 3,000 members. Surely there's a structure there, of course. And you get a lot into other fields as well, that if you're training people in education and esports in colleges and universities, they'd be prepared to go off and do things like web design too, right? There's a lot of proxy jobs and proxy industries that skills in esports can apply relevant job experience for. Communication, I kind of touched on that. There's a bit of overlap with the content, of course, but these are all just examples of jobs that you could pursue when you do have a track and an option for college esports education. Then, of course, there's game developers who are interested in people who know their game. If you're going to go to work for Riot and work on Valorant or League of Legends game development, they're happy that you know the game. Hey, wow, you have 4 years of competitive experience playing for George Mason University. You understand our culture. You understand our game. You know what makes a character bad, and you know when our characters get memed by the community for their deficiencies. That's important knowledge to have. Suddenly, you have resume content to go work for a major developer. And broadcasts, of course, right? Actually, a really huge one that people obtain really tangible skills for esports in the college level is doing stuff like this. Really, like these hard skills, event operations, knowing how to set up these types of things, work cameras, work production, handle a mixer. That's hard, right? And these skills are obtained through people participating in esports studies and in esports programs. They're very much inseparable. And of course, events organization. Like I said, event operations, you get people who handle a lot of things in the back, and then you have a lot of people who are helping lead the event, organizing all the people who are operating in the spaces. Very much like MAGFest is organized, there's obviously people here who help administer the event, like Elizabeth up there, who helped set up all of this, for example. Event organization is key. How do you get a smooth flowing event if you do not have those people prepared for such a field? And colleges and universities offer opportunities for all of this through studies and also practical experience through competitive esports programs. Journalists and photographers, that should go without saying. I think that's actually tied in a little bit, media management, a little bit with digital marketing as well. But of course, there are some nuances and differences. So, to make it even more compelling, right, I asked the question of should colleges and universities even have esports? I chose this graphic even though it did not present current year data, just because I liked its portrayal of past trends, right? Total prize money distributed in esports per year, you can kind of see has a huge uptick in those recent years that I specified that I was contemplating changing my career field, right? This period of 2016 onward where there's large jumps in investment in the scene and therefore higher total money prize pools for esports each year. It tells a narrative of why esports should be included in colleges and universities, both program competitiveness and academia-wise, because it's emerging as a large industry. And people who are living in today's society need to be prepared to go and work in large industries which are relevant. Of course, prize money is only just one measure of how big esports is. Here, Newzoo, which actually made their esports data research defunct, and they're just focusing on game research overall now, you can see that there's esports audience growth. And if there's these hundreds of millions of people supplying a demand for esports market consumption, sure, it should be involved in colleges and universities in terms of education and competitive programs, because people have jobs in these fields that need to be satisfied. And not only that, but esports market revenue worldwide has been projected and continues to show, modest growth year over year. And it's interesting, right? That even though there were a lot of like global environmental contexts which help limit some degree of global exchange, esports remained as something that could continue to be done, right? NBA seasons, for example, when they couldn't play during COVID, some of them simulated through NBA 2K the rest of their seasons. Formula One did Formula One races through games rather than on the tracks. And it's a very valid expression of competition, and therefore a large industry which should be included in areas of research and involvement in college campuses. And so, what are the costs to institutions, though, who want to dabble in esports and competitive gaming? Not a ton, right? A lot of esports games nowadays, they're free. They've been made free. The trend has been that way. A lot of esports, when they became popular several years ago, partly became popular because they could be proliferated, right? I didn't mean to do any alliteration there. It just kind of happened. But being free, like League of Legends, enabled a lot of people with low NPCs, right, to continue to engage in that compelling gameplay. Counter-Strike has looked relatively the same for a very long time. It's not like you're trying to play, I don't know, Starfield or Cyberpunk, right? You don't need a high-end PC to play most competitive games. And sometimes you just need to download them from the developer. And they'll make money off of you through, free skins and things like that. So that's interesting for colleges. They consider, well, I can buy these PCs as an upfront cost, but some of the games that I had to put on them, wow, they can be free. So there is a national and perhaps North American trend of college enrollment going down as well. And so when colleges and universities are thinking about, geez, how do we get ahead of the game? How do we attract students? How do we bring young people to our campuses and say, hey, this is where you need to be? Gaming, right? The vast majority of young people nowadays identify as a gamer in some way. And if you are a college campus that does not have an esports program or some kind of game design, whatever, you do miss out on a lot of prospective students. And so a lot of institutions are projecting that they'll have to cut a ton of employees, make programs lean, and they'll lose a lot of money because enrollment's down. That's a huge problem in colleges and universities. It's a huge conversation going on right now, if you weren't familiar. GMU is quite lucky because the trend is actually projected to continue to grow, which is kind of an anomaly nationally when you think about enrollment trends. But esports is one way that the burdens of decreased enrollment can be eased and attract younger audiences to come to the school. And a lot of schools are actually finding a lot of success attracting sponsors to pay for spaces or cut really big deals to buy a lot of hardware with them in exchange for brand advertisement, right? Marketing opportunities. It's kind of similar to, hey, Nike is going to supply Syracuse with its athletic gear, but you're going to have our logo on it, kind of thing. GMU does the same thing with Lenovo. Tons of computers. We're going to have over 80 Lenovo PCs at the Game Mason event next month. Very, very big deal, right? Sponsorships, that's where all the money in esports is anyway. The vast majority of esports revenue comes from sponsorships. Why wouldn't colleges and universities want to get in on that, just like businesses do? And of course, when they're making broadcasts, Twitch is one of the hugest advents which helped advance esports and gaming, and frankly, interconnectivity for all of us, because it takes minimal costs to start doing a Twitch stream. Now any school can literally have minimal spec tech and run a Twitch stream and show their esports being played nationally, and if people are interested, they'll watch. And of course, community engagement's important. When they are students, and I'm talking about post-enrollment, you want to provide students with things that they're actually interested in. And nowadays, there's always an Instagram group, there's a Reddit, there's a subreddit, there's a Discord server for every interest there can possibly be, I think, on college campuses. Gaming and esports is absolutely one of them. And if a university is not catering to its current population, they're missing out on a huge opportunity to bring people together, which is what these institutions are supposed to be doing in the first place. So this is an example here of UC Irvine, University of California, or at Irvine, if you're not familiar, and their esports arena. Major, right? UC Irvine's one of the early pioneers of having esports in a college and university space and embracing sponsorships and having all kinds of awareness of the program nationally and attracting students just because of that. You can see there's all kinds of branding elements throughout the space, Vertigear chairs, PCs sponsored with Intel and, Logitech stuff, all kinds of things, right? It's amazing. And this was once a novelty thing, but now is a growing trend for schools to have spaces like this. One of my jobs is I'm supposed to attract somebody to get $2 million for GMU in exchange for naming rights for a future venue. Wish me luck. That's a lot of moolah. And what does the infrastructure for competitive gaming in college and university look like? These are just some examples. The list is actually huge, right? There's many esports games, and there's many modalities and organized competitive spaces. But for example, there's the National Esports Collegiate Conference, which has over 300 colleges and universities which compete in it, and thousands of dollars in prizing and scholarships per game every single year. They actually recently, because they've been emerging in a very good way, were named the Tournament Organizer of the Year in large esports collegiate recognition events. And then there's the National Association of Collegiate Esports, which has been around for longer. They have over 240 member schools and thousands of student athletes involved in it, of course. And they claim to give over $16 million in esports scholarships in aid every year. So, college and universities, how attractive is that? Get people to compete for you, pay for their own tuition. And they have, large conventions as well to kind of solidify the fact that they're operating, and they all pat each other in the back. So there's even still other examples of infrastructure beyond just these nationally organized competitive leagues, right? Developers have their own leagues too, of course. We're talking about gaming, we're talking about esports. Why would Riot allow other organizers to just have free reign of their IP, their intellectual property, right? So of course, Riot has taken it upon themselves in a very smart way to organize College League of Legends. This is one of the biggest annual expressions of competitive collegiate activity there is, with over 470 colleges and universities participating nationally every single year, and that number has actually been growing. I kind of looked it up, and I think there's close to 1,400 or 1,500 Department of Education accredited post-secondary schools, and close to 4,000 post-secondary institutions which offer some kind of conferring degree. So there's still room for growth, but you can see a huge number of institutions are involved in participating in Riot's League for tons of money. There was a $190,000 prize pool in esports just for League of Legends, the one game last year. For the top 16 teams, they got shares of that, and that's pretty wild, right? So locally, we have the Mid-Atlantic eSports Conference, or the MAEC, which is a regional member school actually of Call of League of Legends and a lot of other developer titles as well. And like I mentioned, actually, they were co-founded by Events DC and Game Gym, which is local infrastructure. These things are very important to support because one of the big issues with North America is we lack infrastructure to support esports. We're not mature like a lot of other regions of the globe. Korea had infrastructure that was developing in the late 90s. We're behind, right? We're a huge country, and we have a lot of obstacles when it comes to approaching development of esports as an industry. And, of course, college will lag behind that as well. So they're pretty cool. They had their fall playoffs played out at a place called District E, which is right next to Capital One Arena. And it's like I said, it's the space owned by the folks who own the Wizards, the Capitals, and whatnot. Cool folks. Monumental Sports Network. They'll also be a guest at Game Mason, which is awesome. So I wanted to recircle back to each of these institutions and talk about what we do now through this new lens, right? I talked about, we've got a competitive program. Yeah, we compete. We provide students with these opportunities. What does that really look like, right? It's a lot more involved than that. Northern Virginia Community College used to play in the National Junior Collegiate Athletics Association for eSports, the NJCAA. We left that. We were just the best community college, to be honest with you. And joined the MAEC again because there's like exclusivity contracts, right? You can't play in XYZ leagues, especially if someone's a partner school of a developer-ran league. So we play in all of these major leagues at the college and university level. We provide volunteer opportunities, job opportunities for people to learn skills like social media management or how to run our stream. We provide professional development opportunities. Like I said, I sit down with people and I help them work on resumes. I write personal letters of recommendation for students that have gone on to do great things. We try to help them become responsible adults through accountability. Practice is this time. That means don't sleep through it. Right, Tyler? Absolutely. I don't think he's had problems in the past. But it's also like a platform for growth, right? Northern Virginia Community College having an esports program means that actually a decent amount of players from our program have went on past junior college to go to four-year institutions and get scholarships playing games. What a phenomenal opportunity that is. Is it not? So let me show an example of just what I'm talking about, the types of things we can get students involved with. And why it's cool.
No vision for them to play around. Aatrox doing the same mistake, walking to no vision.
Oh, he's hit by the snare. Oh, the stun from the Xerath, the Morgana, but the Morgana falls to the Aatrox. Second Q, the third Q does land Aatrox ulties, but his second trigger pops, picks up another kill on top of the net. Oh my god!
What? The healing!
Aatrox! Oh, the third Q. Hammer, but you're playing out of mine. Sorry. Oh, Aatrox is going. Oh my god. Aatrox. Man, you are 13-3 taking over this game.
So the funny
Yeah, I'm lost for words. It's absolutely crazy. These games are so insane.
This was a quasi-regionally organized esports tournament run by Eastern Tennessee State University, and the casters got so excited that you could hear their voices cutting out the mic because they were just yelling too loud, right? That's what gamers in college are doing, man. They're providing something for the community. They're blowing people's minds with how great they can be, and they have a platform now for being acknowledged for their greatness, which is phenomenal. And so now let's revisit what happens at GMU. Same thing, involved in tons of nationally competitive leagues, very formal infrastructure. Same thing, all of these opportunities, even more, just because the program's so large, there's a lot of work experience, paid work experience, volunteer positions, all kinds of things. Significant community engagement, like I talked about. There's podcasts, there's getting people involved in all kinds of activities, hosting major hosting major events on campus to and that's I know the budget for these things. It's crazy to look at sometimes because, you know, well, it takes a lot of money to make stuff happen, of course, but you know, when it does happen, it becomes something a lot like this, where people get to be gathered in the same space and share over the things in which they're passionate. And I think that's what colleges and universities are supposed to be doing, right? Well, one of the things anyway. It's not the sole purpose. But education in esports now, becoming a more prominent thing at George Mason University, these academic opportunities will help people get those jobs in addition to the competitive experience, get those jobs that was laid out in that web diagram I showed you before, where they can go off into a myriad of fields and get important work in parts of the industry, assuming they work hard enough. So Game Mason, just going to do a quick plug. It happens in February 23, 24, coming up. We're expecting, hopefully, 1,500 attendees. It's not as big as MAGFest or things like that, but we'll have Jennifer Hale as the keynote speaker. She's the Guinness-recognized most prolific actress in video gaming. We'll have Wes Johnson. We'll have the VP of eSports from Monumental Sports Network attending as guests. We'll have a decent amount of sponsors. We'll have 1HP, which is a phenomenal physical therapy and health-related organization that has worked with a lot of pro teams in the esports scene, and right, because esports again is like a holistic thing, right? We're tying together elements of entertainment, health aspects, community engagement, all kinds of well-rounded experiences, and people get to play arcade games, of course. Game Mason will be a fun time. So, and then I do like a little mini plug here. I should have just embedded the other video. One of the students made this. Skills. This is resume stuff I'm showing you right now.
GMU Esports is George Mason University's home for all things competitive and casual gaming. Right now, GMU Esports has the largest Discord on all of campus with over 3,000 members, and the second largest Mason 360 on all of campus with almost 2,000 members.
My favorite thing about GMU Esports is the culture. We can kind of go into any room with any group of people. I can start talking about things, we find a common interest very fast, and it's really beautiful to be a part of.
The gaming media is a little different from other genres of media, so when you come here, you can learn about all of it.
This is GMU Esports.
In watching this video and learning about the various opportunities esports has provided these students, you've inadvertently also watched somebody practicing their video making skills, right? Another aspect, another layer of why esports adds so much value to college and university campuses. So, backpedaling into education a bit, just to get a little bit more context as to why the education aspect is important, because I did talk a lot about the competitive side. Shenandoah University was one of the first institutions to offer a multi-track major in esports, which debuted in 2019. That's local. That's like a couple hours from here. Most of the major areas of study right now... Really? I thought I was plugged in. Let me plug this in. How low am I? I think we'll be fine. Many of the major areas of study include event management, business management, administration, broadcast and production, health sciences related things. Maybe not necessarily related to game design, right? Because making games doesn't mean you're doing esports necessarily. However, there's adjacent areas of study, such as multiplayer game design, that are specific to esports, that are related, and also certificates being offered by institutions for coaching and other aspects of esports. Law as well. Law degrees in esports coming soon. Of course, it's inescapable because the industry is so large that there will be a need for all of these things. It's all tied together, right? The experience-based environment of working with competitive esports programs and offering degrees in college classes in esports works mutually. It provides students with experiences, a place to express their passions, engaging them in competitive and learning-rich environments. And so, when you think about the future stuff, I might not have answers to these, but some of the stuff to ponder is where do esports programs get housed? If we're talking about the competitive side, a lot of schools thought, hey, they should be in athletics. Some schools still do that, but a lot of the national trend has been moving it towards something like campus recreation or university life or student life or whatnot. People are finding out maybe sports is not the best fit for esports because esports is just esports. It doesn't have to be a sport. Scholarships. Oh man, somebody's going to have to step in and control some of this at some point because there's been a large trend at the college and university level of institutions putting students on scholarship, but they're not like full-time or they're enrolled in majors that sound made up just to have a high-end talent at their institution. So it's a huge area of consideration, although some schools are providing full rides. Oh no, it's dying. But anyway, that actually was basically the end of my presentation anyway. And there are a lot of other considerations about the future growth and viability of esports in college. And you know what? We have like 13 minutes left, and I wanted a Q&A as well. So I made it to the end. Would anybody like to ask any questions or engage me in interesting dialogues? Sir. Awesome. That's what I hope to do. Like, yeah, you said imaging and licensing? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's a good question, actually. And one of the things that I had on the slide there that just shut down was a consideration for esports, right? I had mentioned that Shenandoah University, a relatively small institution, was one of the first to bring esports into a full academic swing, with offering a multi-track major, right? Now, well, that's due in part to the fact that smaller colleges and universities were able to pivot quickly and convince school leadership that, hey, we don't have Alabama's football team. We don't have, I don't want to be biased, so screw it. We don't have Syracuse's basketball team. We don't have, a claim to fame, so to speak. And so they were able to pivot to esports quickly and capture a lot of the students. Like Robert Morris University was the first university in the country to offer scholarships for esports. And they became known, their name became familiar to a lot more young people because of that, right? And then people started realizing, oh, Shenandoah University, maybe I should go there. They are proactive in esports. So as larger institutions slowly or quickly, if some are particularly rich or inclined, pivot toward including esports as part of academic and competitive spheres, right? That conversation is going to evolve big time. We're going to start to see a lot more of those individual sponsorship types of things come to fruition. We're going to see a lot more attention being paid to the use of the school's branding and logos. It's going to become a lot more difficult conversation. Right now, you'll actually find a lot of large institutions are telling their esports organizations on campus, some of them being clubs, that they don't want them too closely affiliated with their name. And so it varies by institution. Some schools will say, hey, okay, I guess you're a Virginia Tech esports player, but you can't claim to act on behalf of the school. So then when that player gets like a $50,000 Adidas sponsorship or something, what's the school going to say to that person? Hey, you represent us, right? Well, they'll be like, no, you said you didn't want the club affiliated with you. I'm just using this as an example, nothing against VT, right? It's something that I think is going to emerge as a more critical conversation. I haven't personally had a lot of experience in that, but as these larger institutions become more familiar with how much they need to wrap their hands around this huge phenomenon, and everybody has to have that conversation at some point. So you can see with how decentralized things are, I think developers are going to have to be included in that conversation as well. Because if you have famous athletes in League of Legends, for example, the school is going to say, hey, I want my name on that kid. Riot Games is going to say, hey, he plays League of Legends. He's a model for folks in North America. We want to have rights to that too. We can't let a company like Nike advertise League of Legends unless they're paying us something for it. It's going to become a very complex scene because, again, the games are the intellectual property of those developers. It's dicey. You know what I mean? That's going to be an interesting, evolving conversation that I haven't paid much thought to, but I think is a stimulating conversation to have. This guy's a double lawyer. He's passed the bar in 2 states. Maybe he can talk to some of that stuff. Aren't you? What kind of law do you practice again? Yeah, that's almost. That's almost. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
So you have to forgive this question being from someone who isn't super into the esports scene.
That's totally fine. This is what this is for. Yeah.
Tail of what you were saying of these games are still intellectual property of these companies. Is what is the sort of thought process of when you start recognizing that some of these games might have an end of life? We saw
Yeah.
Overwatch go to Overwatch 2, which makes sense, but
Oh man.
it's when there's just the time where Valorant, let's say, just stops gaining attention and they decide to stop supporting it,
Yeah.
and the money stops rolling in.
Yeah. I have League of Legends tattoos on my body. I am a firm believer the game will never die. Right. And maybe I am kind of delusional in that sense. However, it is true. Developers all have their own approach to how much they invested in esports scene. A company like Nintendo, up until very recently, did not care about the esports scene. They didn't try to nurture the growth there, and so a lot of that's community-based growth and cultivation, right? But because shoot, I lost my train of thought. But basically, that's interesting. Blizzard, of course, mismanaged a lot of things. The Overwatch competitive league, and they're touching Overwatch 2. They made it a 5-person thing. They made the game free. A lot of companies are going to try to roll the punches and try to keep the game relevant. But of course, games usually go as far as the community is willing to support it, right? So when it comes to that kind of thing, I think it's going to be kind of a tough conversation when a game starts to die down, and then you just kind of have to usher it off the plate, so to speak. I think that happens. I'm trying to think if we've had that happen yet. I feel like lately it's been more games being added. Splatoon, Omega Strikers, things like that, being added to the competitive collegiate space. I can't think of a game that has died, unless I'm really forgetting something. But as the interest does wane, right, schools have a practice right now of offering tryouts for larger interest games on the campus. And that tends to scale, the number of offerings tends to scale with the level of interest. So sometimes at Northern Virginia Community College, we'll have 3 League of Legends teams if there's interest, right? And the people have made a case for, geez, I don't want to let you go. I want to develop you as a player, right? So we'll have an academy team, and we'll say, you play, we think you have potential. Next year you might be on a higher team, right? And then when a game scales down to the point where we don't feel like it's compelling to offer it as a premier or a high-level title, we offer it as student-run clubs. Then it becomes a tiny bit less supported, maybe student-run, lower infrastructure surrounded type of thing, where they can still practice it. Sometimes they can borrow namesakes and they can engage in their community, but it might not be as formalized. And I think if a game dies down and there is still interest, then it'll be like club level rather than institution representing. Yeah. It's a tough conversation to have. I never want to see a game die. Yeah. Yes. No, you're good.
I know when it comes to esports, you typically see a lot of FPS, you see Rocket League.
Absolutely.
Although it's still technically considered esports, it seems like the fighting game, it seems like it's like standalone, and there's not like a lot of integration.
Oh boy.
I don't know if it's done on purpose or if it's an accident.
Oh boy.
I know for a fact that Nintendo, my first opinion, hates their fan base with Smash, but for like Street Fighter and like other high-level
Oh boy.
fighting games, I don't see them in the esports conversation. And since you've worked in it, I wonder, what is your perspective?
The fighting game community is one of the longest held communities in competitive gaming because they were there when people were fighting for things like high scores and arcade machines, right? It's it's a strong community, but it's always been its own community, right? There's interesting observations, like people in my age demographic. I grew up playing Counter-Strike 1.6 a lot and the early iterations of Counter-Strike. If you look at kind of these overlaps of competitive gaming, you'll find that a larger percentage of gamers who play League of Legends or Dota or Overwatch they share a background in Counter-Strike. And so there's these titles that are computer-based because of the nature of like timelines or what games are popular while they were growing up, have transitioned successfully into other genres as well. And that's the thing, right? It's where I think a lot of the barriers were the modalities of play, right? Some people weren't engaged in playing with their own homemade controllers. Like the fighting community is big on that kind of thing. They weren't going to fighting game meetups and things like that. But the fighting game scene is just such a strong community, and of course, Northern Virginia is such a huge attraction for. So the Smash community here is outstanding, right? We have so much local talent; it's absurd. And the fighting game community. It's tricky. At Nova, we go through phases of incorporating Smash and not having it, and it be kind of a bit more informal. And we've kind of seen a trend where fighting games also, they also like to do their own thing.
Yeah, I figured.
Yeah. I think it depends on the setting, how a program is set up, and how inviting they become, and the level of emphasis placed on the game involved. George Mason University every Friday runs BMS, which is a huge Smash event. It gets like over 100 people and some famous people there too. So there's room for it, and there's huge involvement. But depending on the community and the institution, how much it gets played up as being a central part, it can vary. But there's absolutely a place because undeniably fighting games is one of the most recognizable forms of competitive gaming. Yeah. Of course. Question for me or him? Yeah.
So it's kind of a two-parter. It's referring to your diagram of different job areas.
Yeah, that's by Nathan Bacom. He's a prolific researcher who's contributed a ton to the field. But go on.
So what strategies do colleges use to sort of focus the passion to a particular job area?
It's a microphone. Yeah.
What should a student look for in college for balance between passion for the game and then developing the skills, which is what they're at the college for?
So I want to re-summarize your question. You're asking me how can colleges apply passion-specific attraction to like high schoolers, and then also sorry.
Yeah, so the passion for the game, but then focusing that passion to a particular job area from your diagram, whether they're better suited for legal or
Oh yeah.
education.
Sure. That's a great question. So one of the things I'm doing right now at George Mason University is I offer a practicum course in eSports, right? Where essentially at the beginning of the semester, I sit down, bless you, with a student, and I talk with them about what it is they want to do in eSports, what's interesting to them. I tell them this is what GMU eSports has in terms of infrastructure. Here's what you can be involved with, and then we can self-tailor an experience for that. If they're interested in something like broadcast or production, they can basically do an internship with the program, learning those skills. Balancing that against other things, I do have students who they're interested in the player development side, right? They might have played for George Mason University in the past and no longer want to be on a competitive team, but maybe they want to coach. There's opportunities to do that too. So I can get them involved with, okay, I got to end my panel soon. Get them involved with opportunities that help them structure contributing to a team from a different way rather than just being a player.